You're watching Forget Being Cool.
Welcome to Listening In, the place where music checks in.
Hi, Josh.
Hello, Dave.
Hello, Mr. Josh Weinberg, host of Listening In.
Hey, you're the host here. I'm just the guy that has the numbers.
No. We're both the host. Anyway, Josh, I made you listen to an album.
Yes, you did.
And let me preface this with, I only made you listen to this album because I saw her live in concert. And therefore I felt it must be necessary for me to give an actual fair opinion of what I think of Betty Who.
And I'm sure a lot of you are going, yeah, exactly. That's my thought too.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly why we would pick this album. Josh, as you always do, tell me about this album.
All right, so on this week's episode of Listening In, we're taking a look at the sophomore album by Australian singer, songwriter, pop star, indie pop singer, Betty Who, The Valley. Betty Who is the sort of stage name of Jessica Ann Newham. She's from Australia, and this is sort of, I guess you could consider it her breakthrough. She initially put out her debut EP in 2013, but I think there was a viral video of people dancing to one of her songs that basically got her signed to RCA, and that basically resulted in her first album, Take Me When You Go, coming out I think it came out in 2014, but there's an interesting thing in that she hasn't really gotten a lot of momentum until a few months ago when, of course, it was announced that she would be the opener for Panic at the Disco's tour, which I'm sure has garnered a lot of new fans. But I remember I first heard of her, I think, last year on The Bachelorette, which I think I mentioned this on our A Fever You Can't Sweat Out episode, that she was performing a song in that, which it also felt like a weird, like it was an okay performance, but I felt like it needed more, and it plays perfectly into my thoughts on the valley, because much like a literal valley, while there are some peaks, there are far more lows.
I'm going to agree with you here, Josh. I don't love this album by any stretch, right? But what I will say is there is nothing on this album that I absolutely despise. So
I wouldn't say despise, but there are definitely things where I'm like, you didn't need to do that.
You know, I saw her live, and my impression of her live was, God, this is okay at best. And to be fair, she sounds terrible live. I'm just going to say it the way it is.
Yeah, I could tell that. I think it was one of the songs on here. I'm not sure if it was Wannabe. It might have been Wannabe. The one where she does go into her head voice a little bit, and it sounds fine on the album, but I'm like, there is no way it's going to sound that natural live.
None of this sounds good live at all. None of it. Now, I'll tell you, being live in concert in the Quicken Loans Arena, which is like, I think it's 20,000 people, 30,000 people in there, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in that range. The only song that got a reaction was Mama Say. It's the only song that was enjoyable live.
It's funny because I think that's probably one of the worst songs on the album for me. Because
I would agree.
I was expecting the chorus to actually be a bit more energetic, but it's all, what would your mama say? Hey. It almost sounds like a DJ Mustard beat, which, given how ubiquitous his beats have become with, pop and hip hop music now in the last 4 or 5 years, it's not surprising. But I did find, when I first heard Some Kind of Wonderful, I thought the chorus was really good on that. And the message behind You Can Cry Tomorrow is kind of nice. It's basically trying to help console a friend. Like, yeah, you had a bad breakup, but here, I brought some wine and we'll get drunk and you can worry about it tomorrow.
I was going to say that is my favorite song on the album. By far, adding it to my library, feeling as if it is justified in there. But here's my crux with the album. is despite the fact that I enjoy and like everything on this album, right? Like I like it enough. Too much of it, and it starts to blend together and is a hard experience to listen to all the way through, to the extent that I have only listened to this album in the last couple weeks because you and I have been busy and stuff has come up. I have only listened to the album in a full entirety one time through in one sitting, like at that time.
I think once or twice, like I gave this thing so many chances to actually get over the hump, but I think I could only get through it a few times. For me, something like the Warren G feature on Free to Fly didn't add anything, and the intro and chorus like don't start no shit, there won't be no shit. I'm like, okay, we all know Hollaback Girl was trying to be so edgy in 2004 with the "This Shit Is Bananas" bridge, but come on, you can do better than that.
Yeah, it's no longer edgy. It's not a thing that works. I got through the album in its total probably 4 or 5 times. I've listened to the entirety of the album 4 or 5 times. It's in the one straight, I listen to this from start to finish, which is not the case with this show. Normally I'll listen to these albums, 2 or 3 times all the way through in one session, whether it's a walk to work or whatever. This I could not come back to and listen to it on repeat, back and forth. I needed to throw other things in there, and I think because of that, this album just doesn't pass for me. It's enjoyable. It's a good listen. A lot of the tracks on here are enjoyable tracks, and I think, throwing a couple into your library, the ones that you resonate with, like You Can Cry Tomorrow, right? I think it's great. Too much of this is bad, and it's not something that I ever want to see live. The music video for Mama Say, Josh, I don't know if you've seen this.
I have not.
It bored me to tears until about the last quarter of it, where we started to actually do some incredible things with videography, but not anything musically, right?
But see, the music videos now, I understand that part of it is the virality and part of it is actually trying to get a concept across from the song, whether that's the director's vision or the artist's vision. But sometimes it just kind of seems like it's an attempt to try and get the song out there. I think for the Valley, for me, it really does feel like part of it may also have been, I don't know if it's some producer influence, some label influence, because you look at the credits on this thing and she, with the exception of the closing track, which is a cover, she at least co-wrote every single track on here, but you have sometimes 3, 4. Free to Fly has 8 or 9 writers. So it does fit the pop trope in that it took way too many people, and yet it doesn't feel like there were that many contributions. And especially because on Pretend You're Missing Me, there had to have been some label influence, because this is my tinfoil hat moment. RCA, of course, is owned by Sony, which also owns Columbia, and Columbia has on their roster a little EDM act by the name of the Chainsmokers, who only happen to have probably the song of 2016 with Closer. And that song, that pre-chorus, chorus bit, Pretend You're Missing Me, I swore that it was just Closer, but just with a slightly different cadence and in maybe a little bit of a different key to distinguish itself. But
this really
all I was thinking was, so baby, pull me close. See, you guys are already humming it right now.
It's funny that you say this, and it is this trope, and this was my biggest worry going into this album, and I think it hits that nail perfectly, which is this is produced to be this thing. This is an album made by the label to sell, not necessarily because Betty Who herself is a talented creator. And look, clearly she can dance, clearly she can sing.
She's a decent songwriter, and that's where I kind of draw comparisons to another well-known songwriter for years that finally broke out and became a pretty big singer, Sia.
Right.
I see some of that in her, but again, with the songwriting on here, especially in a lot of the front half, and then also on stuff like, I don't know, Pretend You're Missing Me, Making Memories, I feel like she also wants to try and be Halsey a little bit. A little bit.
It feels very influenced. It doesn't feel as if it's a voice of her own, despite the fact that I enjoyed it. I did not did not hate this album like I thought I would.
They throw in the superfood feature on Beautiful, but that song is basically it's an empowerment anthem. But I'm like, we already got this about 2 years ago, and Alessia Cara did it much better.
There were a couple of very gay positive people, like
Which is always
gay
welcome.
rights people at the concert, at the Panic at the Disco, and they were like, "Oh man, she's great. She's super into this stuff, and she's come to like big pride events and all sorts of stuff." And I was like, "Okay," because they're like, "No, we know who she is," and I'm like, at that point, I'd never heard of her, and the other act before Panic at the Disco is so bad, Josh, that we're not even going to talk about him.
Well, I feel like off the air, I do want to know what that was, because I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if I feel like I knew them. The thing that kind of ends it on a sour note for me, though, is ending with a cover, I guess, is one thing, but she did a cover of I Love You Always Forever by Donna Lewis, which isn't actually for the sessions of this album. It was initially released in June of 2016 to try and sort of get some interest for, I guess,
her in general.
Yeah, although it was her third number one on the Billboard Dance Club Songs chart, and it was her breakthrough hit in Australia. So I imagine it was just sort of in between her most recent EP at the time of the album. But the choice of cover, I'm like, Jukebox the Ghost beat you to this thing like 4 years ago doing a cover of this song, and they did it way better. And that's going to be a band that we are going to get to someday on this podcast. But I feel like if you're going to do a cover, do it in the middle of the album, because that way it won't be the last thought listeners have when they finish this thing.
Anyway, I liked it. I didn't love it. There's a couple tracks in here, and my recommendation to the listener, as always, is go listen to it. But in this case, I say go listen to it. I think maybe if you try to listen to it all at once, you will get a little bit fatigued. But I think if you go in and say, no, I kind of like this genre, I bet you walk away with one, maybe two tracks that you enjoy. I think that's... Josh is shaking his head.
If you're looking for something that has to do with valleys that's way better than this, the song by the pop punk band Close Your Eyes, that's a much better use of your time than this.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for checking in with us and listening in. Of course, guys, thank you so much for supporting the channel, for Being Cool. The website has all the upcoming albums, the stuff you guys want us to, or you guys, these are words, the stuff we're going to talk about, the upcoming stuff, because it's all there. Go over to the links in the description. They tell you where to go. If you're listening on iTunes, same thing, link in the description. If you guys are watching on YouTube, hit that like button. It makes a big difference. It tells us which shows you guys like and which ones we should keep doing. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'm Dave Moore. That's Josh Weinberg. And we'll see you guys next week for another edition of Listening In.
I almost wonder if she could have called herself Betty Lou Who, and that's how pop music saved Christmas.
For more great discussions, hit that subscribe button or visit forgetbeingcool.com.